Hey, hey, it's Rebecca, and this is Resilient by Design. Feel like I did that intro different, huh? Anyway, it's been a day. Guys, today I'm doing something different. It's called a simulcast. Simulcast? I don't know. With Crystal Collinson. So she has her own podcast, and it is the Productive Designer podcast, and we basically recorded a 2-hour conversation. The first half is on her podcast, and the second half is right here. So welcome if it's your first time finding us here at Resilient by Design. And I hope you guys will enjoy listening to Crystal and I talk about working with builders and developers, because that is her specialty. She has Crystal Collinson Interiors as well as Builder Designer and her podcast. We talk about branding. We talk about how she's in the process of merging her different brands and companies into sort of an umbrella brand. And I share sort of where I'm at and what I'm struggling with actually when it comes to my own personal branding. So I think it's an interesting conversation for anyone who A, is interested in exploring the world of working with a builder developer, and B, if you have some thoughts on branding and you're kind of questioning what you should do. We also go into depth about hiring and like growing a team, and her team and my team are quite different. I have people on salary. She has all freelance and contract workers, which I think is fascinating because she does have a team of 5. So we talk about that. And we also talk a lot about mindset and that comparison trap that we find ourselves in on Instagram. And I paint that picture of how I feel often if I spend a little bit too much time looking into my, let's say, competition, if you will, or my peers in the industry, and how, and what I do to try the best I can to avoid those pitfalls. Anyhow, it's a really in-depth conversation. I think you guys will enjoy it. Enjoy.
All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business.
Are you as tired as I am working in a bubble? I mean, shoot. It's time to maybe socially distance with other people. That is why I love coming to the Collective Workspace. If you are someone who is looking for a little bit of stimulation, a lot of beauty, the Collective Workspace is a really great place to go. It is a co-working space for designers, architects, and builders in Toronto, and they're opening a second location this spring. They have flex workspace and offices starting at $120 a month. There's boardrooms, a podcast booth, which is where I am right now, concierge storage, and a trade-only design library. You can find out more, or if you want to book a tour, go to thecollectiveto.com. All right. Hello, Crystal. Welcome to the podcast. This is exciting. We get to do podcasts for you and podcasts for me.
I know. It's like this, we got a little coffee time here. Not that we're drinking coffee, but
I know. Well,
great.
I have water.
I have water too. I have bubbly water, which I'm thinking I should probably not be drinking bubbly water, but anyways.
So dry February means a lot of bubbly water.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, my thing is I crave beer. I'm just like a girl, which is why I've packed on a few extra pounds in COVID, but that's okay. It keeps me warm. Okay. So I need that bubbly, that refreshing. Yeah.
I would say it's bite. It's got to have bite, right? Like I need something that's got like some, that's why I like bubbly water.
Yeah. Or a good Sauvignon Blanc.
Or that. Yes.
Or that. Anyhow, we digress. Can you introduce yourself to my audience?
So Crystal Collinson, Collinson Interiors. And I have been in this industry, out on my own for, I guess, going on almost 20 years now. I worked for a few different companies before going out on my own. I was last real paying job I had was I worked for the Hudson's Bay company doing store design. So that was my last job as an employee. And then now I have been found myself in this niche of doing stuff for builders and developers. So model homes, sales presentation centers, amenity spaces, that whole realm, showrooms, decor centers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm super interested. I want to talk more about that because it's so, from my experience, and I've not nearly done a fraction of what you've done with builders and developers, but the little bit I have done over the years, so different than residential.
Yeah, it really is.
I really like it because it's just so different. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So I guess today I would really like to, I definitely want to talk about that builder, that relationship working with a builder. And when we're saying builder, we're not saying like a custom home in a neighborhood. It's like community builders.
Yeah.
Right. And
production builders. Yeah. Like people that are building, companies that are building. Yeah, exactly. Like 400 houses in a site. Yeah.
Totally. So I want us to talk about that because I know a lot of designers who listen are always looking at ways to get themselves out there, get experience, and they don't really know a lot about that world. I didn't really until my first project was with Linvest back when I was pregnant with my first, and I did a sales center for them. And I seriously probably undercharged at the time. I was like,
probably.
I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I put in so much blood, sweat, and tears into it. And it was so fun. And I remember my big takeaway from that was, there's nobody coming over and like looking at at the chair fabric and saying, it's a lighter blue than I thought it was going to be in the picture.
For 99% of the time it is. I've had a few clients that have done that. I go, it's not your house.
Yeah, exactly. You're not living here. And you're
not living here.
Sell everything in a few years anyways.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or give it away. So I think it's really interesting. So I would like to talk about that. I'd also like to talk about, I do want to talk a bit about social media. And I know that like you had me on your podcast to talk about marketing, but I'm curious because I did notice that you have, or you're in the process of redoing your websites. I'm so curious about this multi-brand identity thing. Because for me, I'm still struggling with the whole idea of I've got Rebecca Hay Designs, I have RebeccaHay.com. Do I do an umbrella brand? Do I keep it separate? I know it's a lot more to manage. I know I started a second Instagram account for the podcast that was going to be like the Rebecca Hay Instagram, and I just couldn't contain it. It was just too much. And I'm so invested in my Rebecca Hay Designs. It's like my baby, that Instagram account. So then I kind of went back to that. So I want to talk about that a little bit. So I guess let's start with the builder stuff. How did you get involved in that?
Well, it's funny because, people are probably not going to hear this, but I kind of landed in it. So I left my last job as, I think it was in 2001, 2002. And I said, okay, I'm going to go out on my own and I'm going to, be this independent designer now. I'm going to start my own business. And so I joined at the time, the Home Builders Association, and thought, okay, well I'm going to meet some builders thinking custom home builders, right? That's kind of where my head was at. I'll join because that's a good association to belong to. And I, literally kind of stumbled. A large developer builder called me and said, we've got 2 model homes. Part of it's going to be a sales center / decor center. Can you come in and, give us a proposal? And I'm like, sure. And so I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing. Right. So I kind of, it's
to charge.
I have no idea how much to charge. And I'm sure it's, it's the fake it till you bake it kind of thing. And I did 2 models for them. And oh my goodness, to your point, I worked like that was all I was doing at that time. That was the project. And I didn't track my hours, but I can't even imagine how many hours I put into it because I would go over things and over things and over things and try to figure out, did I miss anything? And because it was so new to me, right? I was just trying to think of every possible, what could I possibly have missed? And, there was stuff. I remember that being my first model, and that evening they were having the grand opening kind of, VIP night, people were being invited, and like 2:00 in the afternoon, my sofa still hasn't come for the one living room. And I am like, I'm having a literally meltdown going, okay, what am I going to do? Like, you don't just go to the store and buy a sofa and put it in your car, right? It's not that easy. So anyways, it did come in, but it was very, very like under the wire kind of came in. And so yeah, it was pretty stressful, but got through it. And and then it kind of just sort of started to run. I did more stuff for that builder. I did have a great salesperson that was running that site who kind of showed me the ropes, because it's a different language too, right? Like understanding some of the stuff that they talk about, standards and upgrades and this, and and it's a bit of a different language. So so that's literally how I kind of stumbled into it. And then obviously I did a good enough job that I continued to, and then that's really been where I've pretty much stayed.
That's awesome. Because I don't think a lot of people really even know that that's a role that you can, like I didn't until I started doing them, and they said, oh, and then I'm like, oh, this is a thing?
Yeah.
Like, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And then, so you've developed a team, haven't you? Like over.
Yeah. And it's again, like I always say with our type of business, project-based business, there's peaks and valleys, and it's not like residential. So my husband does residential renovations and construction. So he can say, okay, client B, I should be finished client A by, the third week of March. So we'll start you April 1 kind of thing. Right. And you can schedule that to a certain degree. Builder stuff is like feast or famine, right? If it comes in and all of a sudden you've got, 4 projects on the go. And I remember one time my kids were like 2 and 3, and I was doing, I think I did 27 models in a year. I thought I was going to lose my mind. I was like,
team?
I did. Yeah. But I'm like, I'm going to end up in a hospital.
Yeah.
It was too much. You know what? And that's when, and you and I were talking about this when I was interviewing on my podcast. That's when you go, oh, this growing and how great. And, this perceived success, this image of success, and oh, look at you, you're so successful. What we didn't talk about was the busy, right? When you'd be at cocktail parties with other designers. Oh, how are you? Oh, I'm so busy. Yeah, I've got so many projects on the go. And like that's a status thing, right? Like, look how great I am, right? Like,
and you hear someone say that and you're like, oh, well, I'm not that busy.
Yeah.
My God, they must be better than me.
Exactly.
What am I doing wrong?
Right.
I do that today. I do that all the time. I still do that.
It's crazy. And you think about it, you're going, wait a minute. I don't know how I made it through that year. Like, as I said, my kids were super young. I was doing, it was so insane. And then I looked at the bottom line and I went, wow, I don't know if that was worth it. Like, because I had to bring in so many people and so many team members. And I thought, you know what, for that level of stress that I was going through and managing, because there was, to your point, a lot of people don't really know about this industry, or they don't understand the intricacies of the industry. So it was a lot of like me we had spreadsheets upon spreadsheets upon spreadsheets, because you had to, right? Site Super calls you and goes, okay, lot number 237, the 4th bedroom. Okay. What's
that many going on?
It was nutty.
You're like, which lot? Sorry, 1 second. And then someone name them and you're like, which one is that?
Exactly. So, that's where I think a lot of my productivity and is where my sort of, that need, okay, how can I do this better? How can I do this more efficiently? It's the same process that we're doing over and over again. So developing those sort of systems, and, now it's a well-oiled machine in the sense of I know what to do next and to the next. And we've got, the system changes a little bit, but it's predominantly, we kind of know, what's coming down the pipe and what to do next. And then, the finished date is always a bit fictitious until you get into the final strokes, right? You're like, yeah, we're aiming for spring.
Yes.
What does that mean? That could be March, April, May, that's kind of spring. So we're aiming for spring. And then as you get closer, then you kind of know when things are happening.
Yeah.
But, so I don't know if I answered your question. I can't even remember what it was, but anyways.
I don't remember what it was either. No, I think that's interesting. I think that, it's so funny because for me, like I have these systems ironed out for my residential business, and trying to apply them to the builder world. I mean, it certainly helped in some regards. But I can say like, again, like I had to bring on a lot of people to help when we did those 2 models a couple of years ago at the same time.
Yeah. The installation.
That was in addition to all my residential projects. Right.
Yeah.
And they run slightly differently, not too different. There's more autonomy for sure.
Yes.
I found with the builder stuff. The installation is a lot of long days on your feet, which I'm familiar with from being in television, like working on HGTV for those couple of years that I did. It was very much the same. Just on I think a smaller scale.
Yeah.
In a shorter time frame. But it's funny because, it's a bit of a different skill set because in residential, I mean, you wouldn't give such a broad strokes finish date. You're not going to give a specific day.
No.
Until like the very end. But you're right. It tends to move. It's like, well, we were thinking it's going to be open before Christmas. And you're like, that's not possible. Like, how is that? You just hired me. Like, I haven't even designed it yet. And then it's like, well, maybe before March break. And it's like, what? I'm just going to, and all like the team and I were like feeling like in the dark, like they keep throwing out these timelines. And I just said to the team, just get it done as soon as possible. Like just
have it ready.
Get everything ready and have it ready. Get it ready. Yeah. And then, like, we won't do the flowers until like for the photo shoot or whatever until that time. But yeah, it's so interesting. It's so different. I personally have really loved the ability to be more creative in the projects that I've worked on. I've worked with 2 different builders, so it's like very small experience compared to you, but it's been really fun to have more creative freedom. It's creative freedom that I don't get often with residential clients. Like I will push, like the team and I will definitely push our residential clients. Again, they're living in the space.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's important to push your clients because I think that's part of what they're hiring you for. For sure. Think outside the box a little bit, but also sometimes a client will hire you and be like, I want this kitchen. I'm like, well, I don't really want to do that kitchen. Yeah. And there's that like creator in you that's like at odds. I don't know. Has that been your experience? Like, do you feel like you feel restricted creatively at all?
No, not too much. I think it depends on the builder and who you're working with. And I mean, I've had some great experiences with where I've had the ad agency that's doing the marketing for it has created like a profile, a family profile. So it's like, you know, how old the kids are going to be. And like, it's a total fictitious family, but you really kind of can get into your head and go, oh my gosh, that'll be great. And and he, whatever the name is, Jackson, he likes to play soccer. So then, you know, you might throw in some little soccer things here and there. And you kind of get into this, like you are working for a client, as opposed to builders that are like, okay, we just need these 3 miles to kind of go to it. You're like, ugh. Give me something. So it's hard, right? It's almost the freedom is so wide that you're like, well, what do I want to do? Right. And you kind of have to, but as you know, you're trying to appeal to mass audiences and, you know, appeal to a lot of people that are going to come through. So getting the demographics and getting the buyer profile and all that stuff obviously helps, but it's still pretty vague at that point. So, it's
a bit of a guessing game.
Yeah, it can be. And it can almost be, it's like, it can almost be too open-ended at times where you're like, oh my gosh, well, what, other than, okay, well, here's your budget for upgraded finishes. You got to start there and work within that limit and then, you know, go out from there kind of thing.
Totally. Okay. So who's on your team right now? Like, what are the roles that you have?
So I've got somebody who does my social media like you do, but she's just sort of a contractor. So she's my social media manager. And then I've got my husband and I we intended to share one person, but he's now just taken her completely. So
that tends to happen.
So I said, okay. So because what was happening was she'd be doing stuff for him. And then I'd be like, oh, how's my drawings coming along? And she'd be like, I haven't got to it. And I'm like, okay, you know what? You just got to get.
These people are wondering, your husband is a contractor.
Yes. Yeah. So he does. So when you're talking about the umbrella and our rebranding, that's part of what we've had, like literally this past weekend, we've had my husband and I sat down going, okay, how do we bring all this together? Because it all grew organically, right? We had the business and then I was like, okay, well, I do more builder stuff. So I need to differentiate myself. And then I started the podcast and I'm like, oh my God, now I got all these things flailing about and nothing's cohesive and we got to scoop it back and, so he does that, but so they'll do a lot of design work with clients as well in the sense of just not to the same extent that we're doing, but helping them pick their fixtures and their finishes for kitchens and bathrooms and that kind of stuff, not furnishing it so much.
And do you help your husband at all on his business?
No, I don't.
Oh, interesting. I
Yeah.
always feel like so many of my designer friends, like their dream is to have a husband who's a contractor because you could like join forces.
Well, and you would think that, and not too many of his clients have wanted additional design services. Like my husband went to college he was in graphic design and advertising design. So he's really good spatially. Like he's probably better. Well, he is better at it than me. He can come back and literally draw in like perspective, the play. And I'm like,
Wow.
like, yeah. So he's really good visually. So spatially, he's amazing at like reconfiguring floor plans and saying, okay, we're going to move, but keeping in mind the construction part of it, right? Where you're saying, okay, it'd make more sense if we kept that there because there's a plumbing stack already there. And so, so he's been like, he does a lot of the creative part of that. So he hasn't really needed a designer per se, and he'll go shopping with them and help them put their finishes and stuff together. So he's been doing that. And then he's got teams of his GCs that are on site. So he does sort of like client management. And so anyways, he's brought in somebody to help. Well, we thought we were bringing her in to help both of us, but she's now just helping him. So getting back to the question.
Been with me and my husband because we share an office space, and is always like, we should get an office manager and share. And I'm like, that's not going to work.
No, it's hard, right?
It's aligned. Like, no.
Yeah. It's a challenge. So I just said, you know what? And we run really we run independently of each other. Although he does, him and any of his like trades or laborers will help set up my models. So his team will do all my installations.
Oh, wow. Well, that's like a huge bonus.
Totally. Because I think who would I get to do this? So like
handy to do the extra things that you're like, well, I just need one person. Like we would always call the site super and be like, we need help with this thing, or we need help. Like we'd hire professional installers, but like if we needed to, I don't know, a towel bar showed up late or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right?
And you wanted to like, okay, we got to get it up. But yeah, like for artwork and stuff. So we're like this well-oiled machine. I'd go around and I'd just place the artwork where I'm going to put it in the rooms. And then he would come around and hang it because he knows the height. And half the time I'd walk in and go, that was supposed to go on the other wall. And he's like, yeah, but I think it looks better here. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome because we've done so many of them that we're just, just like boom, boom, boom.
Machine.
It is a well-oiled machine. So, and then I bring in somebody who does my accessories, does all the shopping for the accessories. Cause as you know, that's a humongous job. And it's one of those things where you think you have enough and you never have enough.
And that works for any project. I think, I don't know about commercial, but definitely residential. Like we think we have too much. And then on the day you're like, I need like a tchotchke thing. And I need like
something tall and thin.
I need something tall, something kind of fat here and low.
Exactly.
Yeah. Totally.
So I have somebody who does that. And so she just works when I have got model homes and she's fabulous. She loves it. And I'm like,
but she's
it's
not
yours.
Full time.
No, because they come and go, right? Model homes come and go. And I only need her for a couple of weeks at a time, like maybe a month and a bit where she'll do all the shopping. Yeah. She's amazing. So, and then I've got just a couple freelancers that do projects for me. So kind of on a project basis, because I find, as you know, with like, there's the stages of projects, right? You're heavy in the design stage, and then it's heavy in the ordering stage. And then it's like we were talking before, it's almost different skill sets. So, I'll bring, when we get into the ordering, I'll hopefully have the person I've got right now can do that part of it too. I've tried hiring. I've tried different ways of doing it. And, I think I'm figuring it out, but it's trial and error.
It's good to hear another business owner say that, because I feel like I'm constantly like, now I have a project coordinator ordering. Before I had like, it's a constant, but the difference is I have more people on salary.
Yeah.
I think this is a great conversation, because I didn't think it would go here, but this is good for designers, because one of the biggest questions I get asked in the coaching, in the designer meetup group, in DMs is like about hiring, when to know you're ready to hire, but then how to hire, and are you ready? And like, actually, I'm going to bring in an expert to talk about this, like someone who's like a financial brain person.
Yeah.
Because like, it's hard to know. And a lot of design, I think it's great to hear you talk about this, because a lot of designers don't want someone full-time because they're afraid, again, it's boom bust, it ebbs and flows. And they don't want to be on the hook for paying someone when they don't have the cash flow. And again, in our industry, I mean, we do a pretty good job at predicting cash flow because I have to, because I have a team, but it's really hard.
It really is
really hard. You don't know, like when let's say I have 5 jobs, when they're done, I don't always have something lined up. I just trust that something
Yes.
will come my way, which is a bit of a crazy thing for business if you think about it.
It is, but I've had this debate / conversation, however you want to, is I always say, like, I'm working with a coach right now as well. And we're talking about, how, like making that introduction and setting up the sort of discovery call and all that. And I say, okay, that's great. And, some people will oblige and be like, yeah, sure. We'll have a meetup, whatever, or virtual right now. But I'm like, if they don't have a project for me, and then I don't have a job. Like, it doesn't matter. It's like we were talking before. It's not like I'm selling widgets where they'll just buy some. Like, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, or, at least. Like, these are big projects. So if somebody doesn't have one ready, they're not going to hire you. So it's that, you just, I guess it's just staying top of mind and staying and to your point, just trusting that something's going to pop up. And, I've been doing this for 20 years and somehow it always does, but yeah.
Yeah. So that's great to see that you have like so many. That's so interesting. I wonder if that's a rarity to find these unicorns, if you will, that are on contract or freelance basis with you, but they're not with you all the time. Like, that's amazing to be able to find something.
Well,
I don't worry about that.
Yeah, it's been like, it's trial and error, because you'll, get one person and they're good for, as I was saying before, I think in our other part of the podcast, when you're on mine, finding somebody to do AutoCAD drawings. And that, I find that is a fairly easy position to fill, right? There's a lot of people out there. I've used like different freelance websites like Upwork or Fiverr, where I found people, and that's relatively easy. I just find that it's the admin part. And as we know, design is 20% creativity and 80% project management. I mean, because if you can design all the heck you want, but if you can't actually get the stuff in on time, on budget, and, pull it all together, then,
That's literally what we just talked about. I recorded a podcast with my team and I was like, how much of your job is design? How much is working with trades? And how much is working with clients? And they were like, 20% of our job is design.
Yep.
Like, that's really good. Everyone else needs to hear that, because we all can be so hard on ourselves. Like, we don't get to design enough. And there's all this other shit that we have to deal with. It's like, yeah, no, that's the job.
That is the job. That's right.
Unfortunately, or whatever.
Yeah. So I have tried virtual assistants. I've tried like VAs. I've tried,
what did you, sorry if you don't mind me asking, what did you hire the VAs to do? I'm very intrigued by this idea.
I know.
Tried it.
Yeah. So the VAs, I think when I first hired a VA, I was kind of like, I wasn't really sure what I wanted. And a lot of them didn't work out because I don't think I even had clear direction as to what I wanted them to do.
Yeah.
Or they didn't really understand the industry per se. So I just felt like, oh God, the learning curve is it's just too high, right? Like it's too, to just for them to understand the business. And I don't mean you have to be a designer, but understanding timing and, shipping and warehousing. And then when we need it all to the site, like just all those sort of logistic part of it. And so that was kind of, and then I thought, okay, maybe I need like an operations manager. I mean, I tried various things and nothing really fit. And then I think the last couple of years, I've just found that either what I'm finding right now that I'm doing is I'm hiring a freelance designer for each project that I have.
So if you have a project, like let's say the Oakville project, you have a freelance designer who spearheads that project.
And only that project.
And only that project.
For me, right? I mean, they can have other client, other jobs because they're freelance. Because I'm thinking, what I've been finding in the past is I'm wanting everyone to keep up to speed with me.
Yeah, I know.
And then what's in my head, and
yeah,
and they weren't for some strange reason. But so I said, okay, if I give one that you are on the Oakville project, and you were on the Mississauga project, and you're on the whatever, that way that I just know everything I talk to them about is, and then they're not feeling, I think, either overwhelmed with juggling too many projects for me. Right. Mm-hmm. So they know, okay, when I'm talking to Crystal, this is what I'm talking to her about. So I'm finding that's working pretty good. I haven't got into the purchasing or the sort of the quoting stage yet. So, and I'm learning one freelancer I have right now. I think she's going to be stronger in the project management because her drawings are okay. They're not fabulous. I'm finding I thought she was more senior than she was. And that's another thing I wanted to point out is that I was always hiring juniors and realized that isn't helping me. Been there?
I've been there. And, it's funny. It was only about a year ago. I finally hired a couple people that were quite senior. They're not with me now, but at the time,
there we go.
Muted myself. I was cleaning my thing. And I was like, oh, this is what it's like to work with a professional who has experience, who can just talk to the client like that, who doesn't have to bother me. I showed up twice. It was like this thing that happened. It was like this little miracle moment in my business. And I'm still trying to get it back. And I showed up to 2 reveals. Listen to this. This is crazy town. Maybe you do this all the time, but for me, this was crazy town. I was like, this is impossible. I need to be there on reveal day. Like, I need to help you shop for accessories. Like, I need to make sure. But I was busy and I was paying all these people. So I was like, okay, I had a project manager and a designer in charge. And 2 reveal days, I literally showed up an hour before the client came to a fully styled house. I moved 2 accessories. Now, there was more that I would have done. I had to be like, okay, I have to accept that it's not exactly how I would do it, but it was very good. And I was like, frick, man, this is how a business is supposed to run. And the client was super happy and everyone was happy and the designer was happy and the project manager was happy. Like, it was heaven.
I know, that's when you go,
and everyone
angels.
Left. Yeah, it was amazing. It was phenomenal.
So I think that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned is that I think we designers, as we're saying, okay, we need to bring somebody on. Well, I'll just hire a junior. You're just teaching somebody. Not that that's a bad thing, but you have to understand what you need.
About money.
And that's just
a money thing.
Yeah.
It's a money mindset. And it's that for me was, for years. And I used to, I say this all the time, but my very first hire, I was obsessed with her hourly to the point where I'd look at the clock and be like, is she still working on that thing? Oh my God, it's going to be 3:00. And then at 3:00, that means I'm paying her another, I think it was $15, another $15. And all I could see was all I saw was money going out. I couldn't see the value. And part of it was that they were junior. So it took them longer. And then I'm paying them to teach them.
Yes. It's true though. You're absolutely right. There is a money because you're thinking, oh my God, how do I, and so this last one, we just sort of talked about that. Typically it's been hourly. This last freelancer, I said, okay, here's the scope of work. I want you to take it up to the finished drawing stage. Give me a quote for that. And so I'm like,
flat fee,
flat fee. I'm like, this is amazing. Cause then I'm not stressing about, I'll just do that revisions. Cause then I don't, like those kind of things to your point, right?
Totally. I mean, that's why I like doing flat fees just from our side for our clients.
Yeah.
But it's harder sometimes internally to track. And I bill hourly. Some of my people are on contract and some of them are on salary. It's a mix.
Yeah.
I do prefer on salary because I don't have to track. That's terrible. It's so terrible. I'm the worst. But I don't have to worry. I don't have to write checks. I'm always like, oh, who do I owe money to? It just comes out every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
There's none of this. Sometimes people work more hours. Sometimes they work less. I love it. I do love the salary model. And then if we do well, everyone gets a bonus. If we don't do well, there's no bonus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is that incentive, which is just kind of a nice to have. But
for sure,
hiring more senior, it will. And it's so hard. I know people used to tell me this all the time. And finally I pulled the trigger and I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And I think sometimes too, you might lose money off right from the get-go because you're like, whoa, this person's expensive. But I think it's a longer term investment in your business because then that person's able to bring you to a higher level.
Oh, well, it frees you up, right?
Yes. Frees your time up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, So I think those are definitely things that I've learned and it's just been recently, unfortunately.
When you put one designer on a project, that's okay. We're all learning and growing together.
Yeah.
Because I do that too. I have, I call them a project lead.
Yeah.
So I have one person in charge of all communication and design. I mean, I still oversee the design, but they're the ones who are designing it. And I come and give my feedback and then they're the ones project managing to the end as well. Do you have that freelancer who's in charge of that project also there for installations? Like, are they right through to the end, or are they just to create the drawings for you?
Well, this is sort of like, as I said, it's a new thing. So we're going to sort of see how this goes, because we're all working virtually right now. So that's kind of where we're at. And then I think, okay, well, some of these projects, like the installation, like there's not going to be much, like I'm doing a decor center right now. So I'm thinking like the installation is by the millwork people. Like, you know what I mean? Like which is different than a model home, but even a model home, like we've got this down to, a bit of a science where we've got everything labeled. The last model home we did, which was amazing. We had the shipper, when they received the goods, put a label on the box of what house and what room it was going in, which was like, oh, because typically they would come off, the guys would be standing there holding something heavy, two of them, and looking at me going, where do you want this? And I'd be like, what is that? What room does that go?
And you don't remember because it's been so many months and you've got so many projects on the go.
Oh my God.
Like,
yeah. I'm like,
where do we go in that room? What?
Yeah, I'm like, it's not a Rolodex in my head that I've memorized every SKU and I know where it goes. So it's just little things that we kind of learned. So yeah, installations, again, we've fine-tuned, like the whole shipper receiver thing was like, oh my God, this was great. But again, I'm like, okay, so are you going to charge me hours for that? Like when you're receiving?
Right. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think you did.
Actually, that's a really great point that you've made, receivership. Because also a lot of designers are talking about this, because this is kind of a new concept for a lot of designers, and we've been doing it now for a few years, and it's such a game changer. But so do you order everything and have it shipped to a receiver, and then they hold it until the time, and then they are the ones who deliver on your installation days?
Yeah. So typically the last one we did was, they depend. One time we had to do the delivery for some reason. I think they couldn't do it, but basically, yes, they receive it all. They, catalog it or check off whatever they're getting, note any damages. Now, again, they're not assembling anything, right? It's just staying in boxes and staying in a big...
So they don't assemble?
No, not at the warehouse. They would then...
at the warehouse. No, of course not.
Yeah. Like, well, I know some will do that. They'll take it out and they'll check it and put it together and kind of...
Have to pay extra for that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. So, and then that company will usually then deliver it to the site. Now, I've had their guys assemble stuff and set everything up. But typically, as I was saying before, I get my husband and his guys to do it, and they'll assemble all the furniture.
Oh, wow, nice.
Yeah, put things together, and yeah. And I this past, I did one, I think in May. So I had my son and my niece and I had them. I'm like, okay, you guys are going to just open the boxes. Just go to every room, open the boxes, take the things out and just put them on the floor and get rid of the boxes. And that was their job. So
fun, though. But that's so fun for them. Like they get to see like what you do.
Yeah. I'm like, well, it was COVID. So we're like, okay, well, family.
Yeah, exactly.
Our family.
So you don't have to wear masks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we use the receiver. We use Mittman. Who do you guys use?
I was using, Armstrong. And then recently I used Shuffle Space.
Okay. So I've heard a few designers rave about Shuffle Space.
Yeah.
I had a meeting with Second Closet.
Oh, I have heard of that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was really intrigued. I think they sound similar to Shuffle Space, where they can keep an inventory and they take pictures of it.
Yes.
Which I'm like, wow, that's advanced, because Mittman doesn't do it. Mittman's more of like the original, probably similar to the other ones you've worked with. Old school.
Well, yeah. So Shuffle Space, and you have a login here. Shout out to Shuffle Space.
Not sponsored.
Yes, not sponsored.
Welcome the sponsorship.
Of course we would. Yes. They so they would take picture, and then you have a portal and you can log in and see what has been received.
Second Closet does the same thing, which I think is so clever, because like that just reminded me. Mittman was delivering something to my house today and I forgot to tell my nanny to be home for it.
No calls.
Because
hopefully.
they have a bunch of stuff in storage from my family cottage and I don't remember what they have. And all they have is like the list, right?
Yeah.
Which has been written by hand by the guy at my cottage who picked it up. And so like the way that he describes things is different. And so I'm like, what do you have left? I think you guys have these 2 wicker chairs. Can you deliver them tomorrow? And like, at least they're always at a moment's notice they can deliver. Like, I love that about them.
That's good.
But having that technology is pretty cool. So if anyone is listening and hasn't done this before, it's a really powerful way, especially when you're working in residential design and you want to do a reveal. You don't have the pieces of furniture arriving in dribs and drabs, the way that, I used to do it that way. And if you haven't listened to the podcast where I interview my team, Alyssa talks about what it used to be like, where like the lamp would arrive. And then the client was like, well, this lamp, like, it seems like my grandkids are going to knock it over. I think we should return it. And we're like, yeah, but the 2 wingback chairs that go in front of the lamp aren't there yet.
Yeah.
And so having a receiver who can you can have everything shipped to them and then they deliver. It does cost money, but in my opinion, it is well worth it.
Well, because then the whole thing is coming together, right? They're seeing your whole vision is coming together as opposed to focusing on the one lamp and thinking it's the wrong, shade of white.
And then it's fun for you, right? It's fun for the designer.
Absolutely.
Anyway, okay. So I want to talk branding because you said you've recently gone through this whole branding thing. And I know that I first discovered you because I didn't look up right before this podcast, to be honest. I don't know if it's still live, but did you not have a website that was like the Builder Designer?
I had Builder Design.
Had an interior design website.
So I had builderdesigner.ca. And then, so Collinson Interiors is what we started. And then probably, I don't know how many years into it, about 3 years ago, I was like, okay, I'm doing mainly builder stuff. I want to differentiate, I shouldn't say separate, differentiate myself from the renovation side of our business, which my husband does. So we came up with builderdesigner.ca. And then I had my website redone last spring or summer. And it was just a mess. It's been a mess ever since. Unfortunately, the idea was that we were just going to have one, like the Collinson Interiors, you'd land and then you could go podcast, Builder Designer, or Collinson Interiors, the renovations. Well, somehow, and then all of a sudden I was like checked about 3 months ago. I'm like, okay, Builder Designer is going nowhere right now. Like, what is going on? So I said, this is part of my simplifying journey that I'm going on. So we said, putting it all under the Collinson Interiors because that's what it is. And we'll have just different kind of portals. Productive Designer Podcast right now, that is still a separate website, but I think we're going to bring it in eventually. That will be sort of part 2 of our rebranding. And we're then just kind of trying to make it a little bit more succinct, and that I always use the example Procter & Gamble, right? Like Procter & Gamble makes toothpaste, they make diapers, they make whatever, right? So we're just going to put it all under the one umbrella. And then, if you want renovation services, you click and go there. If you want interior design services, you click, come here, and then the podcast. So that was kind of where and how, because you've got yours as 2 different websites right now too, right?
Oh my God, Crystal, tell me all the wisdom. Seriously.
No, I don't have the wisdom because I looked at your website. I went, oh, okay, so that's how she's done it. So she's done it this way. And I'm like,
I know,
oh
but
my
I feel
God.
like I need to change it. So one of my rocks for the first quarter was to do a new design website. And then my business coach was like, no, you're not doing that. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you need to focus your energies on social media. That's where people are. That's what you need to hone in on that. And you need to work that. And I'm like, okay, I guess so. But now I'm still like, the perfectionist in me is like, needs to be better. So I'm so curious because I thought it was a really great idea. And you're like one of the examples in my head that I have where like, that's super niche, right? So the Builder Designer, super niche. And I'm like, that's brilliant because you can send any builders who inquire, they can go see your website and it's not confusing. It's not like, what does she do?
Yeah.
This is who she is. But then it wasn't connected to the other. So I have this struggle too, where I'm like, I am one person. I am Rebecca Hay. And I have these things. I have coaching. I have a podcast, which are related, and they're currently on one website. And then I have the interior design firm. I struggle with, and of course I poll and I ask everybody and everyone has a different answer, which is so frustrating. But I think it's a female thing. We poll our audience.
Yeah. Cause you're kind of like, I'm thinking this. What do you think of this?
Yeah.
Get your opinion.
Just that I can't trust myself to make a good decision. Maybe I don't trust myself. My God, these podcasts, I learned so much about myself from so much talking, but I struggle with that. Like, is it better to have, like you said, Procter & Gamble, like that's a perfect example of like that parent brand.
Yeah.
And because I agree with you to that extent, Crystal, where it's like, there is power in seeing the variety of things that you do and that you're connected with. Because if someone just lands on Builder Designer and they don't know you have a podcast, even though it's not necessarily related and it doesn't add value directly to a builder client, it just shows, maybe it elevates you in their mind
It's thought leadership, right? Like the buzzword thought leadership, right? Yeah. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I have come back to it. But as I was saying, what happened was that, and similar to what's happened with you, right? These things kind of grew independent of each other and came out. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, now, but they're all me. So should I be putting them under one umbrella? Because it's funny. When I was on your website, I was like, well, where's your podcast?
Oh, see, that's good to hear. No,
Yeah.
good. Like, I like to hear constructive feedback.
Well, no, it's just, because I went Rebecca Hayes Design, and they're like, well, where's her podcast link? Where does that? And then I think I looked up Resilient by Design, and then I was like, oh, so she's got it in a separate website. So
see, if you confuse, you lose.
And that's kind of
marketing thing. If you confuse, you lose.
Yeah.
So somebody said to me that if you have one brand and you go to that website, and people might get confused. Well, like, oh, you're a podcast host, but you do interior design. And will that deter your design clients? That's what somebody said to me. And I'm like, oh, shoot, maybe.
I think you can look at it that way, but I don't think it will. Like, I think if and that's kind of why we decided, okay, we're going to try it this way, right? Just mainly because we're just like, pardon?
It's exhausting to keep it all up. And then also, I guess, I'm assuming you're setting it up this way where if someone types into Google your name, they land there. If someone types in builderdesigner.ca, they still are redirected there.
Yeah.
It's if someone types in the podcast, they're directed there, right?
Exactly.
I guess.
Yeah. And that's the whole idea, so that you can get there in various ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, I'm getting really technical here because I'm really interested. So does that mean you are going to take builder design, like when you go, I'm trying to think of it. Okay, Studio McGee, they've changed it again, but Studio McGee had a website. There was like Studio McGee, here's our designs. And then there was like a tab that said McGee & Co., which is their product line.
Okay.
And if you clicked on that, it actually opened a different domain. Is that what you're thinking of doing? Or are you thinking of really just hosting it on the one site?
So the podcast is going to be, because I still have I have the productivedesigner.com, which is where the podcast and that stuff sort of lives. So I have that domain, and that is exactly what's going to happen. If you go to collinsoninteriors.com, and you're going to see the little podcast icon, and if you want, you can just click and go, and that will go right to the Productive Designer podcast. The builderdesigner.ca, I've got to see, I'm still kind of playing with that a little bit as to whether we're going to, maybe that domain will just go to Collinson Interiors. I think that's probably what we'll do. Because I'm really trying to simplify, like, hugely, because I just felt like I had all these things flailing around, and I'm wrangling them all the time. And I'm like, we got to just put it under one spot. So, but yeah, you could do, yours could either way, could go back and forth, right?
What does that mean for your social media?
It's funny because I was saying to my social media manager last week, I said, just so you know, this is what I'm thinking. I want to just streamline everything. And she's kind of like, okay.
What does that look like?
Yeah, I'm curious. Well, how do you see that working? And I said, well, the way I look at it is, it's okay. Let's say it's interior design in its sort of simplistic interior design podcast for other interior designers and renovation. I said, they're all kind of similar people, right? They're interested in design. They're interested in renovation. They're maybe a designer. Like, we follow other designers. So why not? And I heard this on a podcast recently. I can't remember which one it was, but they were saying, like, if a particular post doesn't resonate with you at that time, you just keep scrolling, right? So it's kind of like I don't think you're offending anybody by, posting something about a podcast when your design clients are going to see it. Like,
so does that
something else you do?
Close some Instagram accounts and just...
I don't know how that's going to work yet. We're still ironing that out. I will probably keep the one that's got the most followers, which is was builderdesigner.ca. It's Crystal Collinson Interiors. We'll keep that. And then I think just continue to build from that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's sort of the decision I came to, is like, Rebecca Hay Designs has been, like I said, my little baby, and that's platform. So I think and that's what I've been trying to do. I don't know if it resonates or if it's working, but is just have a healthy balance of inspiration and like the design side, but then also the motivation and the coaching side. I do still have that Instagram account just for the podcast, but it's not that active now. It's like I post so people can go there to find out about the podcast. Because if they wanted to look it up on Instagram, that would pop up for them. But yeah, it's man, I don't know.
I know.
All new.
This is my new trial. I heard somewhere the other day where business is just one big experiment. Having your own business is one big experiment. Like, yep,
totally. Oh my God, that's such a good quote.
Yeah,
it's kind of fun though. I like. process. I enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
I think if I got to the end of what I thought was my goal, I would just keep going because
there isn't one.
There's no fun.
No.
I don't want to like fully retire. Not that
no.
that I'm near that or can afford that at this moment. But yeah, it's fun. I like that. I love talking business. I love talking to you. I love that. I love talking to other business owners who do it similarly but differently.
Yeah. Yeah. As I say, like you're always learning something. Oh, so you do it that way. Okay, that's a good idea. Or you can pick a nugget out of something and go, yeah, I can apply that to my business. Yeah.
Okay. So our time is getting near the end. I feel like we've talked about so many things. Is there anything else that like you feel you want to share that we haven't touched on, or maybe something we touched on your podcast that we didn't? I don't know. Is there anything? I mean, I've been leading this and just hearing all your thoughts, and it's so interesting. But yeah.
I think I just, the reason I kind of started my podcast, and I think, similar to you, I think when I started reading more about you, I'm like, yeah, we're very similar in that sense that I think we can learn so much from each other. And I've been, in business longer than you have, but I'm still trying things out, and I'm still, like I'm always growing. Like I'm a big, like, personal development. I love that stuff. So I'm constantly listening to, podcasts and trying to like, just, read books and okay, how can I do things differently? And I think that's sort of where all this came from. And I think just, words of wisdom of my years in business is that like, you're never like set and done. Like it's never just, okay, like set it and forget it and you move on. Like things are changing. I mean, look at our last year, fucking pandemic. I mean, talk about adapting and moving, and, both you and I have launched something different because the pandemic kind of gave us that, okay, you got this opportunity. Why not, use the time? And, so I think it's just fair to say that, if it's 2 years into the business or 22 years into the business, right? Like you're never done learning. Like there's always something, that can, and it's certain times you can hear something 3 or 4 times, but until you're ready for it to really mean something, right? Like you got to be ready for it at that time.
So true. I mean, it's so true. There's so many things that resonate with me in a moment, and and you think about it and you think, well, I've probably heard this a million times, but now something's clicking.
Yeah.
I'm ready for this change. I'm ready for. I think what it is, Crystal, is that you and I both have a growth mindset.
Totally.
So both very driven by personal improvement, development, growth, being better all the time.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm looking for an operations manager because I think that's my answer. So I'm going to try it, but I've been trying to my coach has been helping me say like, okay, so I did the job description and, but she's like, I really want you to think about and visualize, how is this person going to improve your life? Mm-hmm. What are they going to do for your team? And what is this person kind of, what are those characteristics? So forget about what's on paper. It's like kind of what we talked about. Was it in your podcast? It's all blur.
I know it is a blur now.
Hiring for personality over just skill set.
Yeah.
It's that sort of, I need to be very clear on that vision. And one of the things that I sort of wrote down on the paper was growth mindset, because if you're going to work with me and for me, I want you to always constantly be looking for a better way.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
I think, and any time in the past that I've clashed with an employee or a contractor or something, it's because like they feel that I'm constantly changing things. But it's just the nature of being an entrepreneur, and I think it's the nature of being a visionary. Have you read? It's the part of the Traction book series called. Oh my God, it's orange. It's sitting next to my desk. I'm in the middle of it right now. It's on my phone and Audible. I'm going to pull it up right now. Okay. It's so good for business owners. Oh,
okay. I see. This is like another thing. I hear somebody say something about a book. I'm like, I got to write that down. I have a whole list on my phone.
Traction, though.
Traction? No.
So good.
Okay. See, I'm writing that one.
Which you do, even though they're not full-time, you should read Traction. It's my Bible. I have like 50 sticky notes in it.
Oh, really?
I follow it to a T. They have this EOS system.
Yes. I've heard of EOS. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just make my own version of it based on the book.
Yeah.
But, it's amazing. So then Rocket Fuel is...
Oh, Rocket Fuel. I've heard of it. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just finishing it. I have the audio and the paper. I find paper with this type of book is important because I can sort of highlight.
Yeah.
And it is about, and if anyone here is listening and you're running your own business and you're spinning your wheels, and you feel like you need help, it talks about the visionary integrator relationship and how, it's so good. I'm such a clear visionary because I don't have the patience for the details. I just want it to get done, but I have so many great ideas and I'm like strategy and like want to move forward and grow. So that's where I'm looking now for like who's that second kind of in command, who is much more about implementation, managing the people and doing that side of the business.
And being nimble, because to your point, I mean, I can't even tell you how many different project management softwares I've tried.
Oh my God, me too.
I've tried all of them. And then I sometimes go, well, maybe I could go back to that other one because I kind of like that one. And like, people are going to like shoot me because, okay, we're doing a new one now.
None of them are good enough. Let's be honest.
I know they're not. Yeah. Always something that could be better. So,
but having a growth mindset, that's what makes you successful. It makes it sometimes hard for the people around you, but
exactly. You just got to come for the ride and be ready to change directions at any moment.
All right. So we're wrapping up. Can you let everybody know, now that we've had this conversation, I don't really know where it is. Where can they find you?
Where can they find me? Well, considering everything is in flux right now, I would say collinsoninteriors.com would be the best place to start. And then I think my Instagram is going to be Crystal Collinson Interiors. That's what we've got it right now. So that's where I'm Instagram, and then Facebook, same thing. And I'm on LinkedIn as just Crystal Collinson. So yeah.
Your podcast.
That thing. Oh yeah. Yeah, the podcast, The Productive Designer.
You have a lot of things,
Yeah. And so theproductivedesigner.com if you want to go to the website, or The Productive Designer is on Spotify, Apple, Google, I think. I don't think we're on Amazon.
Wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Find that one.
Yeah. I mean, every stat I look at, like, I don't know what this, like 80 something % come from Apple Podcast. So,
totally.
Yeah.
And we recorded an episode on Crystal's podcast. So please go check that one out on hers.
Yeah, you can understand where some of our conversations will be like. Remember what we talked about? They'd be like, "It wasn't on this podcast; it was on the other one." So listen to both, and then you'll be
all over the freaking map.
Yeah, and then you'll be in our heads.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, guys, how did you like that? I think it's really interesting learning about different types of interior design, and doing the builder stuff is something that I've really loved. And I have to say, like, I've admired Crystal for a while, just seeing how she's really built that side of her business. And the branding thing just keeps me thinking, man, do I put them together? Do I keep them separate? I think for now, I'll keep them separate. Maybe link them back and forth. That was an interesting comment she made, how, someone lands on her website and they don't even know that she has a podcast. And I realized, shoot, that's me. Like, if you go to RebeccaHayDesigns.com right now, you would have, there's no trace that I have this podcast, which I think is a shame. Anyways, enough about me. I think one of my big little quotes that I wrote down while she was talking was the good reminder to us all that our job is 20% design and 80% project management, for better or for worse. So for those of us who are struggling and wish we could do more design, I think we just need to suck it up and realize that a lot of our job is going to be project management, which is managing the clients, managing the trades, managing behind the scenes details, the admin, the spreadsheets, and all that jazz. And so if that's something that's not your strength, hire someone. Freelance. Like, look at her. She's got all these freelancers. Like, that's so smart. And contract people that come back. I think if you can build a team that way, where they're there when you need them, but they've got other stuff going on, so that if you don't need them, they have work. That's so smart. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I haven't asked for a review in a while, and it would really mean the world. So could you please leave me a 5-star review and just tell the world maybe how you are enjoying the podcast? If you don't subscribe, please subscribe, because that's how the podcast world knows that this podcast is worthy listening to based on the number of subscribers. So please, please, please do that. And come join us in Facebook, in our Facebook group, our designer meetups group. We'll put that link in the, what's it called? The show notes. All right. That's it. I'll see you soon.